Elena Brooks didn't cry. Never cried. But when she opened that old book, she didn't remember buying, and the photograph fell onto her study desk. Something inside her broke without making a sound. It was Harper. Crying. On her wedding day. Not Elena's wedding. Harper's wedding. To another man. 15 years ago. Elena gripped the photograph until it crumpled. Her hands trembled. The image was blurry, as if someone had taken it secretly from a hallway. Harper from behind, in that white dress Elena should never have seen, shoulders slumped and hands covering her face. Crying like she was dying. Elena closed her eyes, breathed deeply, but the pain didn't leave. It never did. Outside, rain pounded against the windows of her Park Slope brownstone. It was 11 at night. Her husband, David, slept in the bedroom. He snored softly, oblivious to everything, oblivious to her. Elena turned the photograph over. On the back, a note written in shaky handwriting. "I can't do this, but I will. Forgive me." Harper's handwriting. Unmistakable. Elena felt the walls closing in on her. Where had this book come from? How had it ended up in her hands? She didn't remember buying it, didn't remember seeing it before. But there it was, in her study, like a message from the past that should never have arrived. She stood up, walked to the window. The city lights flickered under the storm. New York. Her home. New York. Her prison. It had been 15 years since she'd seen Harper. 15 years since that summer in the Hudson Valley. 15 years since they promised never to see each other again. Because the right thing was to walk away. Because their love was impossible. Because the world wasn't ready for what they felt. And now, this. Elena pressed the photograph against her chest, closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, she let the memory flood in. Harper. Her name was like an open wound that never healed. Subscribe now. YouTube prioritizes subscribers, and those who aren't subscribed miss future stories. The book was called Chronicles of Disaster, a novel Elena would never read. It wasn't her style. She was an architect, methodical, precise. She didn't read about emotional disasters. She lived them in silence. But the book was there, and she had to return it. The next morning, Elena dressed carefully. Black pants, white blouse, discreet blazer. Her uniform. The uniform of a woman who had learned to hide in plain sight. David had already left. He was an engineer at a major construction firm, traveled a lot. They spoke little, loved each other less, but they stayed married because divorce was admitting failure, and neither was willing to do that. Elena took the book and photograph, put them in her bag, and headed out. Park Slope was waking up slowly. Coffee shops opened their doors, the aroma of fresh brewed coffee mixing with the smell of last night's rain. Elena walked down 7th Avenue, passing the brownstone facades she loved so much. This neighborhood was her refuge. Here she'd built her professional life, her reputation as an architect specializing in historic building restoration. Here she'd also met Harper. But that was long ago, before everything fell apart. The bookstore was on a discreet corner, almost hidden between an Italian restaurant and a vintage record shop. It was called Books of Oblivion. Elena had never been inside, didn't know it existed until she checked the stamp on the book's first page. She pushed the door open. A bell chimed. The interior smelled of old paper and wood. Tall shelves reaching the ceiling, books piled without apparent order. Dim light filtering through dirty windows. A gray cat dozed on the counter, and in the back, among the shadows, a woman with her back turned organized books on a shelf. Elena froze. It was her, Harper Stone. After 15 years, there, in that forgotten bookstore in Park Slope. The world stopped. Harper turned around. Their eyes met, and everything they had tried to bury came rushing back to the surface like a devastating wave. Harper dropped the book she was holding. The sound of impact echoed through the thick silence of the bookstore. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Just a muffled gasp, almost imperceptible. Elena didn't move, couldn't. Her legs were lead, her heart a wild drum in her chest. Seconds passed that felt like hours. Harper spoke first, her voice hoarse and broken, barely a whisper. "No, this can't be," she murmured with a broken voice. Elena swallowed, gripped her bag strap, tried to smile, but her mouth refused to obey. "I came to return a book," she finally replied. Harper blinked. Those dark eyes that Elena had tried to forget for 15 years, filled with something indecipherable. Fear? Pain? Hope? "A book?" she asked incredulously. Elena pulled the book from her bag with trembling hands, extended it toward Harper, but didn't approach. As if there were an invisible line on the floor she didn't dare cross. "It showed up at my place. I don't know how. But it has this bookstore's stamp," Elena said. Harper walked toward her, slowly, as if afraid Elena was a mirage that would vanish if she moved too quickly. She took the book. Their fingers brushed for a second that changed everything. Elena felt the contact like an electric shock, pulled her hand back sharply, as if burned. Harper looked at the book, frowned. "I don't sell books," she said softly. "This bookstore belongs to my uncle. I just come here sometimes, when I need to be alone." Elena frowned, confused. "What?" she asked. "I haven't worked here in years. Actually, I came today because..." She stopped, shook her head. "It doesn't matter." Elena felt the ground moving beneath her feet. None of this made sense. The book, the photograph, Harper in this bookstore. Everything was too strange, too perfect, too cruel. "I found something inside the book," Elena said, her voice firmer now. She needed answers, needed to understand what was happening. She pulled the photograph from her bag and placed it on the counter. Harper looked at it, and her face fell apart. "Oh my God," she whispered. Her hands flew to her mouth. She stepped back, as if the image had physically struck her. "Where did you get this?" "It was inside the book," Elena repeated. "I thought you..." "Not me," Harper interrupted. Her voice trembled. "I never... Elena, I burned all the photos from that day. All of them. I didn't want any trace left." "Then who?" Elena asked, bewildered. Harper took the photograph with trembling fingers, studied it as if it were a strange, impossible object. Her eyes moistened. "My sister," she said finally. "It had to be my sister. She took this photo. She followed me into the hallway when I escaped before the ceremony. I was destroyed, Elena. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't..." Her voice broke. She put the photograph on the counter and covered her face with her hands. Elena felt something breaking inside her. Seeing her like this, after so long, was unbearable. She wanted to approach, wanted to hold her, but didn't move, couldn't. "Why would your sister put this in a book and send it to my house?" Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. Already knew none of this was coincidence. Harper lowered her hands. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying. Never cried. Not in public. "My sister died 3 months ago," she said in a flat voice. "Pancreatic cancer. It was fast. Too fast. Elena felt her breath catch. "I'm so sorry," she murmured sincerely. Harper nodded slightly, wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Before she died, she told me she had a gift for me, something that would make me happy. But she didn't say what. I thought she meant her book collection, which she knew I loved. But now," she looked at the photograph, "now I understand." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "What are you saying?" she asked cautiously. Harper looked up, her eyes locked onto Elena's with an intensity that made her step back. "I'm saying my sister knew. Always knew. And before she died, she decided it was time for us to know the truth too." "What truth?" Elena insisted. Harper didn't answer. Instead, she walked around the counter and headed to the bookstore door, locked it, flipped the sign from open to closed. "We need to talk," she said, "and I don't want anyone interrupting us. If this doesn't deserve a like, I don't know what does." Elena wanted to protest, wanted to run, but her feet didn't move. Because part of her, that part she'd kept buried for 15 years, wanted to stay, wanted to listen, wanted to know. Harper approached, slowly, until she stood in front of her. So close Elena could smell her perfume, that perfume she'd never forgotten. "Why did you really come?" Harper asked in a low voice. "You could have thrown the book away, could have ignored the photograph. But you came." Elena clenched her fists at her sides, lifted her chin, tried to look stronger than she felt. "I came to return what isn't mine. Nothing more," she replied firmly. "Liar," Harper shot back. The word fell between them like a stone in a pond. Elena felt her cheeks flush. "Don't you dare!" She began to protest. "Dare what? Tell the truth?" Harper took another step closer. Her eyes shone with something dangerous. "You came because you needed to see me. Because these 15 years haven't meant anything. Because you still feel the same thing I do." Elena shook her head, stepped back until her back hit a shelf. "You're crazy. I'm married. You're married. We have lives, Harper. Lives we built after that," she said with a trembling voice. "Lives?" Harper let out a bitter laugh. "You call this a life? Waking up every day next to someone you don't love? Pretending you're happy when you're dying inside?" Elena felt tears threatening to come. No. She wouldn't cry. Not in front of her. "You don't know anything about my life," she responded with a broken voice. "I know everything about your life," Harper shot back. "I know you married David 6 months after we separated. I know he works in construction and travels all the time. I know you live in a nice brownstone in Park Slope but sleep in separate bedrooms. I know you don't have kids because you never wanted them. And I know every time you pass the coffee shop where we met, you cross the street to avoid looking at it." Elena was breathless. "How?" "I've watched you," Harper admitted in a hoarse voice. "All these years, I couldn't help it. I needed to know you were okay, even though I hated myself for it." The silence that followed was dense, loaded with everything they hadn't said for 15 years. Elena closed her eyes, breathed deeply. When she opened them, tears were already there. "I've watched you too," she whispered. "I know you're a partner at a major law firm. I know you married Michael, a prestigious doctor. I know you have a big house in Manhattan. And I know every time you appear in society magazines, you smile like you're the happiest woman in the world. But your eyes never lie." Harper let out a broken sob, covered her mouth with her hand, as if wanting to stop the sound. "I'm destroyed, Elena," she confessed. I've been destroyed for 15 years, and every day it gets worse. Every day I hate myself more for giving up, for not fighting for us. Elena felt something breaking definitively inside her. She reached out, touched Harper's face, wiped a tear rolling down her cheek. I gave up too, she whispered, and I've never forgiven myself for it. Harper closed her eyes under Elena's touch, leaned her face into her palm. And for a moment, the world disappeared. Only the two of them existed, trapped in that small space of time they'd stolen from fate. Then Harper's phone rang. The sound separated them like a whip. Harper stepped back, shaking her head as if waking from a dream. She pulled her phone from her pocket, looked at the screen. Her face went pale. "It's Michael," she said. Her voice was barely a thread. "My husband." Elena nodded, quickly wiped her tears, tried to compose herself. "You should answer," she suggested softly. Harper didn't move, stared at the phone like it was a venomous snake. Finally, she turned it off without answering. "I don't want to talk to him," she said firmly. "Not now." "Harper," Elena began with concern. "I need to ask you something," she interrupted. Her eyes locked onto Elena's with urgency. "Tomorrow. I need us to meet tomorrow. There's something I have to show you. Something my sister left for me. For us." Elena knew she should say no, knew this was dangerous, knew every second they spent together was like approaching the edge of a cliff, but she didn't say no. "Where?" Elena asked. Harper exhaled with relief. "Upstate. Hudson Valley," she replied. Elena felt her heart stop. "What?" she exclaimed in disbelief. "My sister left something for us in Hudson Valley," Harper explained. "In the house where we stayed that summer. The house is still standing. It's abandoned, but it's still there. And there's something inside I need you to see, that we need to see together." Elena shook her head. "I can't go to Hudson Valley with you. It's crazy," she protested. "I know," Harper admitted. "David," Elena started to say. "Lie," Harper said bluntly. "Tell him you have a work meeting, an urgent project, whatever. But come with me, please." Elena wanted to refuse, wanted to leave that bookstore and never return, wanted to protect the life she'd built, empty as it was. But when she looked into Harper's eyes, she knew she'd already lost. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll go." Harper smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds after a storm. "Thank you," she said. "You don't know what this means to me." But Elena did know. She knew because it meant the same to her. Harper approached and took the photograph from the counter, put it in her bag. "Tomorrow at 7 a.m, I'll wait for you at Grand Central Terminal." Elena nodded, didn't trust her voice. Harper walked to the door, opened it, flipped the sign back to open. But before Elena could leave, she stopped her with a hand on her arm. "Elena," she said softly, "these 15 years, I never stopped loving you, not a single day." Elena felt her throat close, nodded slightly, couldn't speak. She left the bookstore as if in a trance, walked through the Park Slope street seeing nothing, hearing nothing, only felt the weight of Harper's words like a stone in her chest. When she got to her brownstone, David still hadn't returned. Elena sat in her study, facing the window, and looked at the city stretching before her. Tomorrow she'd go to Hudson Valley. Tomorrow she'd return to the place where it all began. And tomorrow, maybe, she'd finally have the courage to face the truth she'd been avoiding for 15 years. That she'd never stopped loving Harper Stone. And that maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop running. Elena didn't sleep that night. She lay awake staring at the ceiling of her bedroom, listening to David's heavy breathing through the cracked door. He'd come home late from work, as always. Didn't even ask how her day had been. At 5 a.m, Elena got up, showered in silence. Dressed in comfortable clothes, jeans, cotton shirt, sneakers, packed a few things in a small backpack, underwear, a toothbrush, a hoodie in case it got cold. She left a note on the kitchen table. Emergency meeting in Boston. Restoration project. Back tomorrow. E. Brief. Direct. A lie David would believe without questioning, because he never questioned anything. She left the brownstone while it was still dark. The Park Slope streets slept under the orange glow of streetlights. She took a cab to Grand Central. The driver tried to make conversation, but Elena only nodded with monosyllables until the man gave up and turned on the radio. She arrived at Grand Central at 6:30. The terminal was already buzzing with activity. Food vendors offering bagels and coffee, families carrying huge suitcases, the smell of diesel and food mixing in the humid morning air. Elena bought a coffee at a stand and sat on a bench. Her hands trembled around the paper cup. It wasn't from the cold. It was from what she was about to do. At 5 to 7, she saw her. Harper walked through the crowd with a backpack over her shoulder and dark sunglasses despite the sun barely starting to rise. She wore her hair down, something Elena remembered from before. Harper only wore her hair down when she needed to feel free. Their eyes met. Harper smiled. A small, nervous smile, as if she also couldn't believe this was happening. "I thought you wouldn't come," she said when she reached her side. "Me too," Elena admitted. Harper sat next to her, so close their shoulders touched. Elena felt the contact like a burn. "Did you tell your husband?" Harper asked. "I lied," Elena responded. "Me too," Harper confessed. They looked at each other, and in that moment a silent truth passed between them. What they were doing was dangerous, not just because they were lying, but because every second they spent together was like approaching a fire that would consume them if they weren't careful. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Harper asked in a low voice. Elena didn't answer immediately. Took a sip of her coffee. Looked at the crowd passing in front of them, oblivious to everything. "No," she said finally, "but I'm going to do it anyway." Harper nodded, stood up and extended her hand. "Then let's go," she said with determination. Elena looked at that hand. That hand she'd held 1,000 times 15 years ago. That hand she'd promised never to touch again. She took it. The train left Grand Central at 7:20. It was one of those express trains with reclining seats and air conditioning that ran too cold. Harper and Elena sat together, in the back. No one else was nearby. It was as if the universe had given them a private space in the middle of chaos. During the first hour, neither spoke. Harper looked out the window, lost in her thoughts. Elena pretended to sleep, but couldn't. She was too aware of Harper's presence beside her, of the heat emanating from her body, of the perfume she wore, different from before, but equally intoxicating. Harper broke the silence. "Do you remember the first time we went to Hudson Valley?" she asked. Elena opened her eyes, turned to look at her. "Every second of that trip," she replied. Harper smiled sadly. "It was the best summer of my life, and the worst." Elena knew what she meant. That summer, 15 years ago, had been perfect. They'd been free. They'd been themselves without fear, without shame, without the chains that would later bind them. But it had also been the summer when everything fell apart. "Why would your sister want us to go back there?" Elena asked. Harper pulled an envelope from her backpack. She'd been gripping it since they'd boarded the train. as if it were the most valuable thing she possessed. This arrived at my place last week. It was addressed to me, but with instructions not to open it until today. Today? Elena frowned. Today is the anniversary, Harper said in a hoarse voice. Exactly 15 years since we promised never to see each other again. Elena felt her breath catch. How could she have forgotten that date? Well, she hadn't forgotten. She never forgot. But she'd buried it so deeply it hurt less. Harper opened the envelope with trembling hands, pulled out a handwritten letter. The writing was shaky, weak, as if the person who'd written it was fighting against pain. "Do you want me to read it out loud?" she asked. Elena nodded. Didn't trust her voice. Harper took a deep breath and began to read. "Harper, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I know you're sad. I know you're probably angry at me for leaving you, but I need you to do something for me. Something I should have done many years ago but was a coward. I need you to go to Hudson Valley, to the house where we spent that summer, and I need you to take Elena with you. I know it sounds crazy. I know years have passed, and you both have separate lives now. But I also know you never stopped loving each other. I knew that day, at your wedding, when I saw you crying in the hallway. I knew every time you mentioned her name and your eyes got sad. I knew when you married Michael because it was the right thing, not because you loved him. I failed you, Harper. I failed you when I didn't defend you in front of Mom and Dad. When I didn't support you when you needed someone to tell you it was okay to love who you loved. I was afraid. Afraid of what people would say, of what it would mean for our family. But now that I'm dying, I realize the only mistake was letting fear win. In the Hudson Valley house, there's something I hid for you. Something I never gave you because I thought it would be easier if you forgot. But now I know you never forgot, and neither did she. Go. Search. And when you find what I left for you, make the decision you should have made 15 years ago. Don't live the rest of your life regretting, like I lived mine, regretting not helping you when you needed it most. I love you, little sister, and I hope this gives you back what I took from you. Sarah. The silence that followed was absolute. Harper folded the letter with trembling hands and put it back in the envelope. Her eyes shone with unshed tears. Elena didn't know what to say. Sarah's words resonated in her mind like bells. Each phrase was a direct blow to her heart. "I didn't know your sister," Elena began, but her voice broke. "That she felt guilty," Harper completed. "Neither did I. She never mentioned it, never said anything. But now I understand why she asked for forgiveness so many times before dying. I thought she meant leaving me alone. But it was this. It was for separating us. Share this story. Someone else needs to hear it." Elena felt tears threatening to come. She held them back. Wouldn't cry. Not here. Not now. "It wasn't Sarah's fault," she said in a firm voice. "We made the decision. We gave up." Harper turned to look at her. Her eyes were full of pain. "Do you regret it?" she asked with a trembling voice. The question hung between them like a bomb about to explode. Elena wanted to lie, wanted to say no, that she'd done the right thing, that her life with David was good. But she couldn't. "Every day," she whispered. "I regret it every damn day." Harper closed her eyes. A tear rolled down her cheek. Elena reached out and wiped it with her thumb. The gesture was so natural, so instinctive, that neither questioned it. "Me too," Harper said with a broken voice. "God, Elena, me too." The train continued its journey along the tracks. The landscape gradually changed from city to countryside. Green mountains, blue skies, the sun slowly rising on the horizon. And inside the train, two women who'd spent 15 years running from their feelings finally began to face them. Harper rested her head on Elena's shoulder. It was a simple, almost innocent gesture, but for both it meant everything. Elena closed her eyes, and for the first time in 15 years, she let herself feel. The rest of the journey passed in comfortable silence. Sometimes Harper talked about trivial things, her work as a lawyer, difficult cases, complicated clients. Elena told her about her restoration projects, old buildings she'd saved from demolition. They talked about everything except what mattered, about their marriages, about their husbands, about the impossible decision they knew they'd have to make soon. They arrived in Hudson Valley at noon. The heat hit them when they got off the train. A dry heat, different from New York City. The sky was an impossible blue, without a single cloud. Harper rented a car, a small white Honda that had seen better days. They drove through the area's winding roads, passing colonial houses and bustling farmers' markets. The smell of fresh bread and apple pie floated in the air. "Do you know where the house is?" Elena asked. "I never forgot," Harper replied. They left the main town via a narrow road that wound between mountains. The landscape was impressive. Green valleys, small villages, cornfields extending as far as the eye could see. After half an hour of driving, Harper turned onto a dirt road. The car bounced over potholes. Dust rose around them like a cloud. And then, there it was. The house. Elena felt time stop. It was smaller than she remembered. A wood and stone construction, painted white, but now faded by sun and time. It had a front yard surrounded by a rotting wooden fence. The windows were boarded up. The garden, which had once been carefully tended, was now a sea of wild weeds. But it was the same house. The house where it all began. Harper stopped the car in front of the entrance, turned off the engine. Neither moved. "I can't believe it's still here," Elena said in a hoarse voice. "My family never sold it," Harper explained. "It belonged to my grandmother. When she died, it was abandoned. No one wanted to take care of it. Too many memories, I guess." Elena opened the car door and got out. The warm wind tousled her hair. She walked toward the house slowly, as if approaching a ghost. Harper followed. When they reached the front door, Harper pulled an old rusty key from her backpack, inserted it in the lock. It turned with difficulty, but finally gave way. The door opened with a creak. The interior smelled of dust and years of abandonment. Light filtering through cracks in the windows created golden patterns on the wooden floor. Everything was covered with a thick layer of dust. The furniture was still there, covered with white sheets now gray. Elena entered slowly. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. And then she saw it. In the center of the living room, on an antique table, was a box. A wooden box carved with flowers. She recognized it immediately. It was the box Harper had bought at the farmer's market that summer. The same box where they'd kept their secrets, their letters, their promises. Elena approached. Her heart beat so hard she could hear it in her ears. Harper stayed at the door, watching. Her eyes shone with tears. "Open it," she said softly. Elena reached out, touched the box, and slowly, very slowly, lifted the lid. Inside the box were objects Elena thought she'd never see again. Letters, dozens of them, tied with a faded red ribbon. She recognized them immediately. They were the letters they'd written during that summer, when they spent days apart because Harper had to return to the city for family commitments. Elena picked one at random, opened it with trembling hands. Harper's handwriting was unmistakable, youthful, but passionate. Elena, every hour away from you feels like an eternity. I miss you. I miss your laugh, your eyes, the way you look at me like I'm the only person in the world. I'm coming back Friday. Wait for me. Always yours, Harper. Elena felt her throat close. She put the letter back in the pile and continued exploring the box's contents. There were photographs, many. Harper and her at the farmer's market, laughing in front of a produce stand. Elena with a flower in her hair, which Harper had put there. Harper hugging Elena from behind, both with eyes closed, smiling. There were train tickets, museum entries, a map of Hudson Valley with circles marking the places they'd visited together. And at the bottom, wrapped in tissue paper, was something else. Elena carefully pulled it out, unwrapped the paper. It was a ring, a simple silver ring with a small turquoise stone embedded. Elena looked at it without understanding. She didn't remember this ring, had never seen it. Harper approached, looked at the ring in Elena's palm. I bought it for you, she said in a broken voice. The last day of summer, I was going to ask you to stay with me, to not go back to New York City, to go away together somewhere where we could be free. Elena looked up, astonished. What? Elena exclaimed, astonished. Harper sat on the floor, as if her legs couldn't support her anymore. Elena sat in front of her. I had a plan, Harper continued. I'd saved money, had contacts in San Francisco. I thought we could start over there, away from our families, away from everyone who would judge us. Why didn't you ever tell me? Elena asked with anguish. Harper wiped tears with the back of her hand. Because the day I was going to ask you, the news came. My father had a heart attack. I had to rush back to the city. And when I got to the hospital, my mother was devastated. She told me my father had been working too hard, that stress was killing him. She told me I needed to be strong, to stop being selfish and think about the family. Elena felt the world tilting beneath her feet. I don't understand, she murmured, confused. They told me they knew, Harper said in a flat voice. About us. They'd seen the letters, had tracked my calls. They knew everything. And they gave me an ultimatum. Either I ended things with you and married someone appropriate, or they'd disown me and kick me out of the family. Elena felt she couldn't breathe. Oh my God, she gasped. My father was in a hospital bed, Harper continued, her voice breaking. Connected to machines. The doctor said another shock could kill him. And my mother looked at me with those tear-filled eyes and said, Are you going to be the one to kill him, Harper? Are you going to choose your whim over your family? Tears ran freely down Harper's face now. Elena wanted to hug her, but was paralyzed by the revelation. I called you, Harper whispered. Remember? I called you that night from the hospital. I told you we needed to talk, that something had happened. Elena remembered that call, remembered the tone in Harper's voice. She'd known something was wrong. And when we met the next day, Elena began with pain. I told you we had to end it, Harper completed. That what we had was impossible, that it had been a mistake. I lied to you, Elena. I lied because I thought if I told you the truth, you'd try to convince me to run away together. And I wasn't strong enough. I was too afraid. If any part of this story feels like your life, the hype button helps keep it from staying silent. The silence in the room was deafening. Elena looked at the ring in her hand. This ring that should have been hers. this promise that never came true. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Elena asked in a hoarse voice. Why didn't you ever tell me the truth?" "Because by the time I had the courage, it was too late," Harper replied. "You'd married David. You'd moved on. And I thought it was better for you to keep believing I didn't love you enough, that it was better for you to hate me than to know I'd abandoned you out of cowardice." Elena shook her head. Tears fell down her face uncontrollably. "I hated you," she confessed. "For years, I hated you. I hated myself for loving you, for being stupid enough to believe what we had could work." "I'm sorry," Harper sobbed. "God, Elena, I'm so sorry." Elena stood up, walked to the window. Needed space, needed air. This was too much. 15 years of lies. 15 years of unnecessary pain. "My sister knew," Harper said from the floor. "Not everything. But she knew enough. She knew I'd given up, that I'd chosen security over love. And she felt guilty for not defending me, for not having the courage to tell our parents they were wrong." Elena turned to look at her. "Your father, what happened to him?" "He survived," Harper said bitterly. "Lived 10 more years. And every time I saw him, he reminded me of what I'd sacrificed for him. I married Michael because he was a doctor, because he was successful, because my parents approved. And my father was at my wedding, smiling, proud that his daughter had done the right thing." "Harper, I don't regret taking care of my father," she interrupted. "He was my family. But I regret letting fear control my life. I regret not telling you the truth. I regret letting you think you weren't enough for me, when the truth is, you were always too good for me." Elena wiped her tears, looked at the ring in her hand, held it up to the light. The turquoise stone shone like a piece of sky. "Why did your sister leave this here?" she asked. "What did she want us to do with this?" Harper slowly stood up, walked toward Elena, stopped in front of her, so close Elena could feel her breath. "I think she wanted us to finish what we started," she said softly. "She wanted us to have the chance they took from us 15 years ago. But we're married, to other people. We have lives," Elena protested. "Lives?" Harper repeated with a bitter laugh. "Is that what you call this, Elena? Waking up every day pretending to be someone you're not? Going to bed every night next to someone you don't love?" "It's not that simple," Elena murmured. "I know," Harper said. "Believe me, I know. I have a house, a career, a reputation. Leaving Michael would be a scandal. It would destroy everything I've built." "So, what are you suggesting?" Elena asked with frustration. "That we leave everything? That we run away together like we're 20 years old again?" Harper looked directly into her eyes. "I don't know. Not yet. But I know I can't keep living this lie. And I know you can't either." Elena wanted to argue, wanted to say she could, that she'd been living this lie for 15 years and could keep doing it. But it would be another lie. Harper reached out, touched Elena's face. Her thumb caressed her cheek with a tenderness that made Elena close her eyes. "Stay with me tonight," Harper whispered. "Just tonight, in this house where we were happy, where we were ourselves, without thinking about tomorrow, without thinking about consequences." Elena opened her eyes, looked at Harper, saw in her eyes the same fear she felt, but also hope, love, the possibility of something she thought was lost forever. "Tonight," Elena said. "Just tonight." Harper smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds after 15 years of storm. They stayed there, in the middle of that house full of memories, surrounded by the ghosts of what could have been. And for the first time in 15 years, they allowed themselves to be together without fear, without guilt, without the weight of the world on their shoulders. Outside, the sun began to descend toward the horizon. Shadows lengthened in the yard. Wind whispered through the wild grass. And inside the house, two women who'd spent 15 years running from their love finally surrendered to it. Just for one night. Just to remember what it felt like to be alive. Elena put the ring in her jeans pocket. Felt it there, against her leg, a small but significant weight. A promise that never came true. A possibility that maybe wasn't completely lost yet. Harper took her hand. "Come," she said softly. "There's something else I want to show you." She led her through the house. They passed the kitchen, where they'd cooked together during that summer. The dining room, where they'd played cards until dawn. The narrow hallway leading to the bedrooms. Harper stopped in front of a closed door. The last bedroom. The one they'd shared. "Ready?" she asked. Elena nodded, though her heart beat so hard she thought it would burst from her chest. Harper opened the door. The room was exactly as they remembered. The big bed with colorful comforter, the window facing the backyard. The small desk where Elena would draw while Harper read. But there was something new. On the bed, carefully laid out, were two dresses. One white, one light blue. Elena recognized them immediately. They were the dresses they'd worn to a town festival that summer, the night Harper had told her, "I love you," for the first time. "My sister kept them," Harper said in a trembling voice. "I thought she'd thrown them away. But she kept them all these years, cleaned them, ironed them, and left them here for us." Elena approached the bed, touched the white dress. The fabric was soft under her fingers. "Why?" she asked, though deep down she already knew the answer. Harper stood behind her, wrapped her arms around Elena's waist, rested her chin on her shoulder. "Because she wanted us to remember," she whispered. "She wanted us to feel again what we felt that night, before everything got complicated, before fear won." Elena closed her eyes, leaned back against Harper, and for a moment, she allowed the past and present to blend into a single truth. They'd never stopped loving each other. They never would. The sun slowly set over Hudson Valley. The mountains turned shades of orange and purple. The air cooled, bringing with it the smell of earth and wild flowers. And inside that abandoned house, two women clung to each other as if the world were about to end. Because they knew it might. At least the world they knew. And maybe, just maybe, that wasn't such a bad thing after all. The evening light streamed through the house's windows, painting the walls in shades of gold and purple. Harper had lit some candles she'd found in a kitchen drawer, miraculously intact after so many years. The scent of melted wax mixed with the smell of dust and memories filled the air. Elena stood by the bedroom window, looking at the mountains darkening in the distance. She held the white dress against her body. It was smaller than she remembered. They'd been younger then. Thinner, more innocent. "Are you going to put it on?" Harper asked from the doorway. Elena turned. Harper was already wearing the light blue dress. It fit snugly, marking a figure that time had molded gently. Her hair fell over her shoulders in dark waves. In the candlelight, she looked 20 years old again. "I don't know if it'll fit," Elena said. "There's only one way to find out." Elena hesitated, but something in Harper's gaze made her decide. She turned and began unbuttoning her shirt. She felt Harper's eyes on her. It wasn't a sexual gaze. It was something deeper. It was recognition. It was memory. She carefully removed her clothes and put on the white dress. The fabric was soft against her skin. She pulled up the zipper with difficulty, but managed to close it. When she turned, Harper had tears in her eyes. "You look the same," she whispered. "God, Elena, you look exactly the same." Elena looked at herself in the small mirror hanging on the wall. She saw lines on her face that weren't there before. She saw gray hairs she'd been religiously dyeing. She saw the exhaustion of 15 years of living a lie. But she also saw something else. She saw the woman she'd been. The woman who'd loved without fear. The woman who'd believed love was enough. "I'm not the same," she said. "Neither of us is." Harper approached, took Elena's hands in hers. "You're right. We're different. We're older, more tired, more broken. But when I look at you, I still see the same woman I fell in love with that summer. The woman who made me believe I could be happy." Elena felt her throat close. She wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. Harper led her outside, to the backyard. Night had fallen completely. The sky was filled with stars, brighter than they ever appeared in New York City. Crickets sang in the grass. The air smelled of earth and night flowers. They'd cleaned a space in the yard. Harper had brought an old blanket she'd found in a closet and spread it on the ground. She'd placed more candles around, creating a circle of flickering light. "Do you remember when we used to lie here watching the stars?" Harper asked. "Every night," Elena replied. "You said you could see your future in the stars." "I lied," Harper said with a sad smile. "I didn't see anything. I just wanted an excuse to stay up with you." They sat on the blanket, facing each other. The silence between them was comfortable now, as if after so many years of unspoken words, they could finally just be. Elena spoke first. "What are we going to do, Harper?" The nickname came out naturally, without thinking. It was how they'd been 15 years ago, before everything got complicated. Harper closed her eyes, breathed deeply. "I don't know, but I know I can't go back to my life like this didn't happen, like I didn't see you again, like I didn't remember what it feels like to be whole." "We're married," Elena started to say. "To men we don't love," Harper interrupted. "With lives we didn't choose. Elena, I've spent 15 years dying slowly, every day a little more. And today, here with you, I feel alive for the first time in all this time." Elena wanted to deny it, wanted to say her life with David wasn't so bad, that she had a successful career, that she had friends, that she had stability. But it would be a lie. "David won't even notice I'm gone," she said quietly. "He probably didn't even read my note. He's so absorbed in his work that I could disappear for days and he wouldn't notice." "Michael either," Harper admitted. "He lives at the hospital. When he's home, he's sleeping or watching TV. It's been months since we talked about anything real. Years since we touched." They looked at each other. And in that moment, the truth crystallized between them like ice under the sun. They were trapped in dead marriages, in lives that were consuming them, and the only way to save themselves was to do the unthinkable. Leave everything. Hit like if you feel this story is telling you something important. "I'm afraid," Elena confessed. "Afraid of what people will say. Afraid of losing my reputation, my career, everything I've built." "Me too," Harper said. "But I'm more afraid of continuing like this, of waking up one day at 60 and realizing I wasted my life because I was afraid of what others thought." Elena reached out, touched Harper's face. Her skin was warm under her fingers. "Do you think we can do it?" she asked. Do you think we can be happy? Harper covered Elena's hand with hers. I think we deserve to try. I think we owe it to the girls we were, the ones who believed love was enough. Love wasn't enough the first time. Because we didn't fight for it, Harper said firmly, because we let fear win. But this time will be different. This time we choose. Elena felt something breaking inside her. All the barriers she'd built over 15 years, all the excuses, all the lies she'd told herself, they fell like glass to the ground. Okay, she whispered. Let's choose. Harper looked at her as if she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. Really? Really? I don't know how. I don't know when. But I know I can't keep living without you. I already tried. For 15 years I tried, and it almost killed me. Tears ran down Harper's face now, but she was smiling as if they'd given her life back. She moved closer to Elena, kissed her. It was a soft kiss at first, almost shy, as if afraid Elena would change her mind. But then it deepened. It became 15 years of longing, 15 years of pain, 15 years of love that had never died. When they separated, both were crying. I love you, Harper said. I never stopped loving you. Not a single day. Me neither, Elena replied. And this time, I'm not giving up, whatever happens. They stayed there, embraced under the stars, while the night stretched around them. They talked for hours about what it would be like to leave their husbands, how they'd face their families, where they'd live, how they'd rebuild their lives. They didn't have all the answers, but they had something more important. They had a plan, and they had the determination to carry it out. When exhaustion finally overcame them, they went into the house. They lay on the big bed, still wearing those dresses from the past. Harper hugged Elena from behind, exactly as she used to do 15 years ago. Good night, my love, Harper whispered. Good night, Harper, Elena replied softly. And for the first time in 15 years, both slept in peace. The next morning, they woke with the sun streaming through the window. For a moment, Elena felt disoriented. Then she remembered where she was, who she was with, and what they'd decided. Fear hit her like a wave, but so did hope. Harper was already awake, watching her. Do you regret it? She asked softly. Elena thought about her answer, thought about David, about her brownstone in Park Slope, about the orderly, predictable life she'd built. And then she thought about this, about waking up next to the person she loved, about the possibility of being truly happy. No, she said firmly. I don't regret it. Harper smiled, leaned in and kissed her. Then let's do it. Today. Now. Let's go back to the city and end this. Elena nodded. Her heart beat like a drum, but she was determined. They got up, changed clothes, packed their things. Before leaving, Elena took the turquoise ring from her backpack, looked at it for a long moment. Then she slid it onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Harper saw and smiled, took her hand, intertwined their fingers. Ready? Elena said with determination. Ready? Harper repeated. They left the house, locked the door, got in the car, and began the journey back to New York City, the journey that would change their lives forever. The drive back to New York City was different from the trip there. There was no nervousness, no uncertainty about what they felt, only determination and fear, a lot of fear. But this time fear wouldn't stop them. They arrived in the city at sunset. Lights were beginning to turn on across the metropolis. Traffic was dense, as always. Smog floated in the air. Everything was exactly the same, but they weren't. Harper stopped the car in front of Elena's brownstone in Park Slope. "Do you want me to come up with you?" she asked gently. Elena shook her head. "No, I have to do this alone," she responded firmly. Harper nodded. Understood. She'd have to face Michael alone, too. "I'll call you as soon as I'm done," Elena said. "Me too," Harper promised. They kissed one last time, a kiss that tasted of promise, of future, of everything they were about to build together. Elena got out of the car, walked to her building's entrance, didn't look back. If she did, she might lose her courage. She went up in the elevator. Her heart beat so hard she could hear it. When she reached her floor, her hands trembled as she pulled out her keys. She opened the door. David was in the living room, watching TV. Didn't even look up when she entered. "How was Boston?" he asked distractedly. Elena closed the door behind her, took a deep breath. "David, we need to talk." Something in her tone made him finally turn. He looked at her with a frown. "What's wrong?" he asked with suspicion. Elena sat on the couch facing him, put her hands on her knees to keep them from trembling. "I wasn't in Boston. I was in Hudson Valley," Elena said. David blinked, confused. "Hudson Valley? Why?" he asked without understanding. "I went with someone." "With Harper Stone," Elena replied. The name meant nothing to David. Why would it? Elena had never told him about her, never told him about that summer, about the love she'd lost. "Who's that?" David asked, bewildered. "The woman I love," Elena said in a firm voice. "The woman I've always loved, and the reason I want a divorce." The silence that followed was absolute. David looked at her as if she'd grown a second head. "What?" he exclaimed in disbelief. "I want a divorce, David. This isn't working. You know it. I know it. We've been living like roommates for years, not like spouses, not like lovers, not even like friends." David stood up. His face was red. "Are you telling me you cheated on me? With a woman?" "I didn't cheat on you," Elena said. "Not physically. But yes, I've been lying to you. I've been lying to myself. And I can't keep doing it." "This is ridiculous." David started pacing. "A woman? Since when?" "For 15 years, since before I met you. I loved her then. I love her now. And I'm going to be with her." David let out a bitter laugh. "Do you know what this is going to do to your reputation? To your career? No one's going to take you seriously. You're going to be the gossip of the whole city." Elena stood up, looked David directly in the eyes. "I don't care. Not anymore. I've spent too much time worrying about what others think, about doing the right thing, about meeting expectations, and it's made me miserable." "You're crazy," David said. "You're having some kind of crisis. Give me a few days and you'll forget." "No," Elena interrupted firmly. "This isn't a crisis. It's the clearest decision I've made in my life. I'm leaving, David. Tonight, I'm going to pack my things and go." "Where?" "With her." David looked at her for a long moment. Elena saw several emotions pass across his face. Anger, confusion, and finally, something that looked like relief. "Okay," he said finally. "If that's what you want." Elena blinked, surprised. "That's it? You're not going to fight?" David sat back down, suddenly looked tired. "What for?" "You're right. This hasn't been working for years. I've been unhappy too. I just didn't have the courage to admit it." David, There's someone else, he confessed. At my work. It's been a year. Nothing serious, but it could be. If you and I... It's okay, Elena said softly. I understand. They looked at each other, and for the first time in years, they really saw each other. Two people who'd married for the wrong reasons, who'd tried to make something work that never had a chance. I'm sorry, David said, for not being what you needed. Me too, Elena replied, for not being what you needed. It was a strange goodbye. No shouting, no drama. Just two people accepting they'd made a mistake and finally had the courage to correct it. Elena packed that same night. Didn't take much. Clothes, some books, her work tools. Everything else could wait. When she finished, she called Harper. Is it done? Harper asked in a trembling voice. It's done. You? Michael took it better than I expected. He said he'd seen it coming, that we haven't really been a couple for years. He asked me to be discreet, not make a scandal, but that if this was what I needed to be happy, to go ahead. Elena felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Where are you? At my aunt's place. She has an apartment in the West Village. It's empty. She says we can stay there as long as we need. I'm coming there. I'll wait for you. Elena took her suitcase, gave one last look at her brownstone, at the life she was leaving behind. She didn't feel sadness, only relief. She left and closed the door. The West Village apartment was small but cozy. It had a balcony facing a tree-lined street, white walls, simple but comfortable furniture. When Elena arrived, Harper was on the balcony, looking at the city. She turned when she heard the door open. They looked at each other, and suddenly, everything became real. They were together, really. No lies, no hiding. Elena dropped her suitcase and ran to Harper, hugged her so tight they could barely breathe. We did it, Elena whispered. We really did it. We did it, Harper repeated, crying and laughing at the same time. They kissed there on the balcony, while the city stretched before them. It didn't matter anymore who saw them. It didn't matter what they thought. Only they mattered. The next few days were chaotic. There were divorce papers, difficult conversations with families. Some friends pulled away. Others, surprisingly, supported them. There were gossips, of course, in both their social circles, at their jobs. People talked, judged, speculated, but Elena and Harper paid them no attention. They were too busy building their new life together. Harper left the big law firm where she'd worked, opened her own practice, specializing in civil rights. Elena continued with her restoration work, but now accepted only the projects that truly passionate her. They made less money, lived in a smaller apartment, no longer attended high society parties, but they were happy. Incredibly, astonishingly happy. One afternoon, 6 months after moving in together, Elena came home and found Harper in the kitchen, cooking. What are we celebrating? Elena asked, kissing her cheek. Harper turned with a smile. My divorce was finalized today. Officially. It's definitive. Elena felt her heart fill with joy. Mine too. The papers came this morning. They looked at each other, and then burst out laughing. It was ridiculous to celebrate their divorces, but at the same time, it wasn't. Because it meant they were free. Completely free. I have something for you, Harper said. She pulled a small box from her pocket, opened it. Inside was a ring, simple, silver, with a small blue stone embedded. It's to match yours, she explained. I thought, if you want, we could... She didn't finish the sentence, but Elena understood. Are you asking me to marry you? Harper smiled nervously. I know we just got divorced, and I know it sounds crazy, but I've waited 15 years to ask you this, and I don't want to wait another day. Elena felt tears running down her face. Yes, she said. 1,000 times yes. Harper slid the ring onto Elena's finger. It fit perfectly next to the turquoise ring she'd never taken off. They kissed. A kiss that tasted of future, of fulfilled promises, of love that had survived 15 years of separation and finally found its way back. Outside, the sun set over New York City. Lights began to turn on. Life continued its course. But inside that small West Village apartment, two women who'd been lost for 15 years had finally found each other. And this time, nothing and no one would separate them. That night, as they lay in bed, embraced in the darkness, Elena whispered, "Do you think your sister knew this would happen? That leaving us that box would give us the courage to choose?" Harper stroked Elena's hair. "I think she knew. I think that's why she did it, to give us the chance we didn't have 15 years ago. I wish I could thank her. Me too. But I think the best way to thank her is to live. Really live. Without fear. Without regrets. Exactly as she wanted us to." Elena snuggled closer to Harper. "Then that's what we'll do." And they kept that promise. They got married a year later, in a small ceremony in Hudson Valley, in the garden of the house where it all began. Some family members attended, some friends, not many. But those who were there were the ones who really mattered. Elena wore the white dress. Harper wore the blue. The same dresses from that night 15 years ago. Restored, renewed. Like them, when the officiant pronounced them married, they kissed under a perfectly blue sky. And all the people present applauded, including, Elena was sure, Sarah's spirit, watching from somewhere, smiling, finally at peace knowing her last wish had been fulfilled. The years that followed weren't perfect. There were challenges. There were difficult moments. There were people who never accepted their relationship. But there was also joy. There was laughter. There were mornings waking up together. There were nights staying up talking about everything and nothing. There were shared projects, fulfilled dreams, a life built on the foundation of true love. And every year, on the anniversary of the day they reunited in that bookstore, they returned to Hudson Valley, to the house that was now theirs. They'd slowly restored it, carefully. They'd turned it into their refuge, a place where they could simply be themselves. No masks, no pretenses. Just Elena and Harper, two women who'd loved each other, who'd lost each other, who'd found each other again, and who this time had the courage to choose each other, again and again, forever. Elena was in the house's garden in Hudson Valley, 10 years after that first reunion. The afternoon sun was warm on her skin. Harper was beside her, reading a book. Elena looked at the ring on her finger, the turquoise and the silver, one next to the other. Symbols of promises made, of promises kept. "What are you thinking about?" Harper asked, closing her book. Elena smiled. "How lucky I am. That I almost lost everything. That I almost lost you. And that your sister gave us a second chance when I thought there was none." Harper took her hand. "It wasn't luck," she said softly. "It was choice. You chose to come to that bookstore. You chose to get on that train. You chose to open your heart again. You chose to fight for us." "We chose," Elena corrected. "Both of us." "Both of us." Harper nodded. They kissed as the sun slowly descended toward the mountains. The sky turned shades of orange and pink. Birds sang their last song of the day. And in that perfect moment, Elena knew with absolute certainty they'd done the right thing. That surrendering to love hadn't been losing. It had been winning everything that really mattered. Subscribe now to not miss the continuations. YouTube only recommends content to subscribers, and the best stories come after this click. If you want the continuation of this story, write it in the comments, because that's the only way I'll know what you want. And don't forget that YouTube only prioritizes subscribers. So subscribe now to not miss the next story that will make you believe in love and second chances. This is just the beginning.